welcome back to my channel. This is Heidi from My Reading Life, and I am starting my mid-month book bash vlog for March. It is Friday, March 12th, so it's day one of the mid-month book bash, and you will have seen my bullet journal spread for the weekend, and I don't have particularly any goals in mind other than I want to read as many hours as I can towards the 24 hours. I don't think I'll get to 24, but I'd like to give it the good old college try and see as far as I can get for the weekend. So what will I be reading? The first thing that I would like to finish is this book. This is A Memory This Size and Other Stories, which is a collection of short stories from African writers. This bind-up was put together for the Caine Prize for African Writing in 2013. So I have not very much further to go. I'm on page 252, and there's about 300 pages, so I should be able to finish this today. That is my goal for that. I will also be reading this chunker. This is my Barack Obama Promised Land, and you can see my tabs, and I'm reading that for the BookTube Prize. I am, for March Mystery Madness, reading Lonely Graves, which is by Britta, which is co-authored by our own Britta Bowler and her co-author, whose last name is Bolt, and I can't remember his first name. Give me a minute to get to it. Rodney Bolt. So this is, like I said, for March Mystery Madness. I am on page 88 at the moment of this mystery. So I'll be working on that. I think that's it on the cart for now. I am also listening to White Feminism. It's my audiobook right now. And we'll be working on The Black Cabinet, which is a buddy read that I'm doing with Doris and Patrice and Karen. So that's what's on the list, the currently reading list right now, which is a little bit out of control. So I'm hoping to clean up some of these this weekend and get through some of them. Others, I know they're longer term projects. And then I also need to get to this one. This is another BookTube Prize book that I have to read by the end of the month. So that one will be a priority. And then our Book Naturalist Book Club book, Ecology of a Cracker Childhood by Janice Ray. That's also going to be a priority. And then the rest of these books are my March TBR. So we'll just have to see what we get to this weekend. Good morning. It's Saturday of mid-month book bash, and I had a very successful reading day yesterday. I read about 5 hours total, which is awesome, and I completed 2 books. They were both books that I had started prior to yesterday, so I didn't read them straight through, but I did finish 2 books. So the first book I finished was A Memory This Size and Other Stories, which I had said I wanted to complete yesterday, so I did do that. This is a short story collection that came out in 2013, all from African writers, short stories for the Caine Prize for fiction. So some names that you probably will have heard of in this collection. Let's see, there was one at least I thought. Chinelo Okparanta from Nigeria. I think I've heard that name before. But there are authors in here from Sierra Leone, Kenya, Uganda, Malawi, Botswana, Zimbabwe. So all different African countries. So that was really great. It really gave a diversity of perspectives. This collection was really uneven for me, which is not unusual for a short story collection. There were 3 stories that I particularly enjoyed and really spoke to me. And 2 of them had to do with environmental degradation in the different countries and governments that are exploiting natural resources to make money, but not expending that wealth to benefit the citizens of the country, and also not taking into account what the citizens of the country want. Do they want the money instead of their natural resources, or would they prefer to keep their natural resources and not perhaps have so much money? So I thought those were really good and strong pieces that really made me think about sort of exploitation of natural resources, particularly in poorer countries. But then there were some that just did not hit the mark for me for whatever reason. But that's a fairly normal thing. So if you're interested in writing from Africa and different perspectives maybe that you hadn't heard of, this is an interesting collection pickup. I don't know how widely available this is. I found it at a library used book sale like quite a few years ago. But anyway, completed this one. And then, oh boy, people, I loved this book so much. So this is Lonely Graves by Britta, which is a writing team comprised of our very own Britta Bowler and her writing partner. I cannot remember his first name. I have to look it up every time. Excuse me while I try to look it up. Rodney Bolt. So this is a mystery novel, and as it says on the front, it's a Peter Posthumous mystery, and Peter Posthumous is the main character of this book. He works for the Lonely Funerals Department. That's not their official name, but it's this department set up in Amsterdam where if a person passes away and it's an unattended death and the person cannot, no family can be identified for the person, the city government actually puts on a funeral for that person. So this department of 3 or 4 people, they have to research to see if they can find the deceased person's connections, any family connections, any kind of information that they can find that would give them clues as to anybody that might be looking for this person or might be missing this person, or basically what the city government is interested in is having somebody help pay for the funeral expenses, right? The perspective of this book is all from Peter Posthumous's. It's not all from his perspective, but it's all based on he works for this Lonely Funerals Department, and so we get information. He's looking up. He's got these cases and he's trying to find out about people, and he's sort of a person who can't let go. If there's a mystery or an unanswered question or his brain gets engaged with a puzzle, he just can't let it go. And so we get that's sort of one storyline that we're following. There's also a storyline about this another government department called INCSEC, which is like the intelligence service, people who are spies, I guess you would call them, but the particular group that we're following is they are watching a group of young Muslim men in the city and trying to determine if this group of young Muslim men have become radicalized and if they're planning some sort of attack on the city or whatever. So in learning more about the the group of young men that this intelligence agency is sort of spying on, we start to learn more about this one particular Muslim family and get to know the mother and the father and the son and the daughter in this particular family. And it's hard to see in the beginning how all these pieces are going to come together, but they do come together in just the most interesting way. Like, first of all, the imagination that it took to put this all together, it kind of blows my mind. There's so many interesting pieces to this. And at first, I will say, I did struggle a little bit in the first, 30 or 40 pages because the names were really tough for me. And that's just because I'm an American and I'm bad with names. But the Dutch names of the places and the people, and then you have sort of names from the Moroccans and the Syrians in the story. So there was a lot of names and a lot of characters, and they were names that I was unused to reading, and so that was a little difficult for me at first. But once I got to know the characters, I just was in, and I stayed up past my bedtime last night to finish this book because I was enjoying it so much, and I just had to know how it was all going to come together, how these disparate storylines were all going to come together. And I love Peter Posthumus. He is such a fabulous character. He is so thoughtful and such a good person at heart. I really loved his character. There's many side characters that I also really enjoyed. I really liked the way this book explores issues of belonging and how cities are so often segregated into different ethnic groups, and whether or not we as individuals make enough of an effort to sort of bridge those lines and to learn about people who aren't in our little social group, and whether or not that basically this book is laying it out there that this is probably not great because it leads to misunderstandings and nobody making the effort to sort of learn and understand what other groups of people are going through. So I loved all of that discussion that was in this book. I also really enjoyed the thoughtfulness in which some of the characters were bringing forth ideas about young Muslim men and why we automatically assume that they are going to be terrorists. And why we don't just say, oh, they're young teenagers or young 20-somethings, and they're sort of searching around for meaning in their lives, and why don't we give them something that would provide that meaning rather than allow, instead of this INCSEC group just sort of sitting back and watching and waiting to see what this group's going to do. Why not intervene earlier and sort of try to put people on a different path? And I think that's a really interesting idea as well. I don't know enough about the subject to know if that's even possible, but I thought, instead of just assuming people are just automatically going to become terrorists, maybe we can think, oh, there might be a point in these young people's lives where programs or people can step in and provide a different pathway, because everybody rebels against their families when they're teenagers, right? Everybody's going to rebel against the ways that they were brought up, and they're going to be questioning their parents and questioning the authority figures in their lives. And some people have enough support structure around them that they make it through that period okay, and then other people don't, and those are the people that go off the rails in various ways and end up with bad outcomes. So I just thought there was a lot for a mystery novel. There was a lot to dig into here, a lot that made me think. Like I said, the imagination to put all these pieces together was blew my mind. I just loved it, and now I want to immediately purchase all the rest of the books in this series and read them right now. So I'm really trying hard not to do that so that I can stick to my plans and goals for the rest of my March reading. But I am very, very tempted, I will tell you. So it is Monday, and my hair's sticking up. Fix that. And I did not check in yesterday, I don't think, about my reading. So I didn't get, my goal had been to try to get as close to 24 hours of reading done in this mid-month book bash as possible. And I didn't get anywhere near that. I think I'm at like around 13 hours total at this point. But you know, I did make a lot of progress on some stuff that I was working on. So I finished the short story collection Daddy by Emma Cline that I was buddy reading with Sean, the book maniac. We started that in January at the beginning of the month, and we've been reading one short story a week till this past Sunday, and we finished it. So yay, another book down. And I will say this was a contemporary short story collection, and I really overall liked it. There were a few short stories that I did not care for, particularly because they had themes in them that I just have struggled with. I just don't particularly care for. But the concept around the short story collection is what the title says, Daddy. So all of these contemporary stories, a lot of them are about middle-aged men having some sort of midlife crisis, taking up with younger women, trying to deal with the fact that they've imploded their lives and have not maintained good relationships with their families and their kids. There's a lot in there that relates to the Me Too movement, that relates to how women have to, you know, deal with men in the world today in order to try to be successful. There's some icky things in there about, people taking advantage of each other. So, be aware of that. I will say that Emma Cline is very emotionally evocative in her writing. Like, I feel she's a very good writer because even when I didn't like the story, like, I felt strong feelings while reading each of the stories. So, like, whether it be melancholy, disgust, I could feel what the characters were feeling, whether I liked them or not. And so I think that is a pretty good sign of a short story. Just like with most short story collections, though, for the most part, I wish that there was more to the story. Like, I always feel like I would wish to know more about the particular story for the most part. So, but overall, I really did enjoy the collection, and I am glad that I read it. I also finished this book, Flowers for Algernon by Daniel Keyes. I had picked this from my ancient TBR because I thought it was like going to be close to a middle grade type of a read, because on the inside cover it says something about for 13-year-olds and up. But it really is, I think, more of a YA or even an adult novel. So the premise behind this story is that Charlie, our title character here, is a 30-some-year-old man who is mentally handicapped, and he gets taken up by these researchers to be in a science experiment where they're going to artificially increase his intelligence. They're going to perform some operation on his brain, and it's going to cause him to gain intelligence. So he does, that happens, and then we go through this whole process where he begins to learn very rapidly within a matter of weeks, days and weeks, all of the things that you would learn over the course of your life, right, as you increase. But it takes you like 18 years, right, to get to this point from where you first learn to tie your shoes and use silverware and get manners and learn how to like stand in line politely and all that sort of stuff, to when you're learning like quantum physics in college. But he's doing this all in a matter of days. And it's really difficult. Like, it's really sad. It's very emotional as Charlie begins to see how he was treated. Like, he begins to understand what people really meant when they did certain things while he was considered not intelligent. He begins to realize how people really look at people with mental handicaps. And it is really, really difficult to read. And I don't want to go into any more of the plot because that I don't want to mess that up, because this is kind of like a mildly science fiction type read. But it very much, what's I think is so important about this book is really the questions of what is intelligence and how much does intelligence matter when we deal with one another as humans. And what really matters is your humanity, is not your intelligence, but it's your humanity. And that comes through very clearly in this book. And so I'm really glad that I read it. It was really sad to read. It's only about 200 pages. I guess originally it was just a short story, and then it got lengthened out into a longer book. So like I said, I'm glad I read it, but it is really sad. But it does really make you question how we treat each other, and what's important about intelligence and what's important about humanity. So yes, very good, that one. So that's 2 more books finished that were on my currently reading list when I started this. I also read about 100 pages in A Promised Land by Barack Obama, and I've read some in The Black Cabinet, and I started Ecology of a Cracker Childhood. So I'm not sure how much more I'll get read today, but I will check in at the end of the day. It's about 4 o'clock right now, so I'll check in before I go to bed and give you the total number of hours that I read for the mid-month book bash. Okay, so it's the end of the mid-month book bash. I didn't get to 24 hours in the 4 days, but I did get 16 hours read, and I kind of fell apart on my spa weekend prompts. I did get flowers for my ambiance. I did have a foot bath, but I forgot to film it. I meant to paint my toenails, never got around to it. I made blueberry muffins, and I walked on the beach. So, I did pretty good, but I didn't successfully complete all 5 prompts. And I did want to mention, when I was talking about flowers for Algernon earlier, I forgot to mention that this is written as kind of like journal entries. He has to write these progress reports as his intelligence increases after he's, entered into the experiment. And that's a very interesting technique to tell the story, and I really enjoyed it. So just wanted to point that out because I think that is an important piece of this piece of fiction. So anyway, a very successful mid-month book bash, 16 hours read total, completed 4 books, started a couple others, and continued on reading in a couple others. So I am excited. Thanks, Doris, for putting this all together again. I'll talk to you guys later.